my name is Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end and liked it, thumbs up, subscribe, bell notification, yada yada yada. You know the deal at this point. I wanted to do, I just hadn't done like I feel like a rambling librarian video in a while. And this is less rambly, it's just library centric, but I very weirdly, the most watched video on my channel is my how to become a librarian, which was like a video I thought that was like maybe 5 people will watch it, and like I had a bunch of people comment on there and ask questions and just be curious, which I'm surprised. I also looked the other day, it has over 10,000 views. That is like, libraries are not something, it's not like a hot topic, like, really, ever. I wanted to do a video trying to sort of explain my process of getting to where I am as a librarian, because I've had quite a few comments on that video saying things like, I'm, this age, is it worth me going into the field, or I'm looking at going into the field, but everyone's telling me, there's no jobs in it, or whatever it may be. But just, preface this whole video to that I'm coming at it from a Canadian perspective, specifically Alberta. Some of it can be countrywide, but there is a distinct difference in how libraries are funded based on generally provinces, how they are structured, as well as just like the general, like, what your society views, like, the value in it. It could be very different. It is very different in the way that I hear about libraries in like the UK versus how they are in Canada here. I have a subscriber who I talk to on Instagram DMs all the time, and she has to drive, like, I think she said like 3 hours or something like that to get to the closest library. And then my friend, well, like a proper library, and then my friend who actually lives in the UK, I didn't realize she lives in London, so this could be just London specific, but like you have to pay to place like interlibrary loans. Like you have to pay $1 or £1 to like get to request a book in, which is mind-bogglingly an issue. But that's, aside, that someone was like, oh, it's gotten better. It may have gotten better. It still sounds like there's a horrendous amount of underfunding, which is pretty disappointing, considering how socialized I always assumed the UK was, and with everything going to happen with Brexit, I don't know what else is going to change in that. So just preface this whole, another preface to the video of like, look at when your time comes for voting, and when, budget time comes around, look what your community is doing to your library, and vote for people who support your library. Not just keeping its doors open, but making it a functioning library that can do amazing, amazing things if they give them the funds to do. So I graduated high school on time in 2010. Yeah, it would have been May 2010. And I immediately went into my Bachelor's of Arts, which I ended up doing in honors, so 4 years total in history. And I originally went in saying I wanted to do teaching, maybe. My school had a con ed education program, but I wasn't totally 100% sure on teaching, and you had to do a minor, and I wasn't sure, well, for the grades I wanted to teach, I wasn't totally sure what I wanted that to be, so I decided to not go into con ed, to keep it a little bit more open-ended, and then figure I'll just go into education if I want to, at the end of this degree. And it's a good thing I did that, because I think I got to the end of first year and just was looking at the general atmosphere, especially, I'm from Ontario, so I went to school at Brock University in St. Catharines. Which, by the way, St. Catharines is a beautiful city. I really, really do hope I can end up, like, retiring there. It's absolutely beautiful. I loved living there. It's close to the border. It's close to Toronto. You can do stuff in Niagara Falls, but it's not too touristy. It's an amazing geographic place, and it's very heavily populated by university students, especially during the school year. So, I mean, transit was honestly really good. It had its hiccups, but for what it dealt with, it was a good system. I ended up deciding that I went in being like, I want to do teaching and I want to focus on English history, specifically the tutors. I got to second year and was like, whoa, Russian history is where it's at. I don't know why I had this thing in my mind that Russian history was boring, because it's really not. They're backcrap crazy of a country. It's absolutely astounding, insane, the crap that Russia has in its history. It's insane. So I think that was one thing that I kind of came to realize, that I knew my personality, and I did not think that was a personality where I could go into teaching and be happy. And I am quite thankful that I decided not to go into teaching, especially right now in Ontario, with the current government teaching. It's been I don't know anyone actually that's gotten a full-time permanent position except one person who went into a Christian school. So, or sorry, no, I mean one person who just got in full-time, one extra person who got in full-time permanent in like the regular system. So unless you're willing to go kind of into the Christian school system, which is not where most people go, most people want to go into the public or the Catholic systems. It's just, there's really not many jobs in there unless you speak French or like math, sciences stuff, which is not something I was going to be doing. So I'm glad I didn't end up doing that. So I just decided, let's look at something else then. So I spent second year just kind of doing random stuff, and I think it was in second year or beginning of third year. I want to say it was the end of second year though. I had a class on Viking history, and my teacher took us to our special collections archives in the library, which was on the 10th floor at Brock, and I didn't know that was a thing. So I'm really, really thankful that my teacher did do that, and we just kind of wandered around and see what was there. And it's, you know, Brock doesn't have anything, I think, like, you know, they're not going to make news stories about it really necessarily or anything, but St. Catharines area has a lot of like the War of 1812 and all that sort of, you know, local history sort of stuff. So I was curious as to what they have, and Brock is a relatively older university, and just the geographic area is an older place with some roots. So I spoke to the archivist at the time and asked if they were interested in all, or if they had any openings for volunteers or anything like that. They said, sure. We've never had really someone ask in the last few years. Just send me an email. So I ended up for one shift a week, basically, for most of third and fourth year, spending, you know, 2 to 3 hours helping them deal with backlog or cataloging new donations, or helping them just clean things out or organize. And it was really, really interesting that I got to touch that part of love of history, but I felt that I was missing a lot of the interaction with people, because it is a special collections archives. There's like a finite amount of people who are going to be interested, and a lot of people too will be like people that are doing home genealogy research stuff that aren't coming in necessarily. You're dealing with them over the internet and sort of and emails. So I was like, I like certain parts of this, but I don't know that archives is everything I want. I was toying between doing the MLIS degree and then going to get my master's in history, which I do think I still eventually want to do. I haven't done it yet, but I think I will eventually get that done. And for a while I toyed with that. Originally I wanted to go to Humboldt University in Berlin because I got to visit it when I was in Germany for a course, and they offer free tuition even for international students for a master's in history taught in English. But I just kind of toyed back and forth, and then the process to apply was very lengthy because it is international, and it got confusing. And then I realized I would have to take out like another 2 years worth of debts and have no and likely still have to do another degree and have no promise of a job after finishing that master's in history. Or if I could go to my MLAS, if I can maybe get into a university, a library institution at some point, maybe I could get discount tuition on continuing my education. So I toyed around with that and then decided to apply for my MLAS degrees. In Canada, there's like 10-ish universities, last I checked, that offer the MLAS degree program. Some of them, I think Saskatchewan and Manitoba have like one where you spend 2 years at one and 2 years at the other. Since I finished as well, Ottawa opened up one at their university as well. But I decided that I did not want to stay in Ontario for just family reasons too. I wanted to kind of get out and do other things. So I applied to McGill University because I have family in Quebec, and McGill offers the program and in English, and I've heard nothing but relatively positive things about McGill University, as well as Dalhousie. And I had the opportunity to go visit Dalhousie during my, I think, fourth year, when I had my reading week in February. I went to Nova Scotia to see friends and family. I ended up getting rejected from McGill without an explanation, which, you know, that was kind of crap because I think I probably would have chosen to go to McGill over Dalhousie. But I got into Dalhousie. When I got the rejection letter from McGill, I had a mental breakdown and was like, my life is over. I didn't apply anywhere else. What is going to happen? Like, you never leave that mental space, I feel like, as a millennial. But I did end up luckily getting into Dalhousie. So I went straight from high school, straight to undergrad, straight into grad school, which I thought was pretty normal. I was also on student loans, and in Ontario at the time, you could take a 6-month break after finishing school for when you had to start repaying loans. And that was not something I knew that I was going to be able to afford. So I didn't want to take a year off. However, when I entered school, I found out that I think with my class, it was like 25 or so of us in my year in grad school at my MLAS degree. I ended up, oh, I ended up being like, I think one of the like third-ish of the population of the class that went straight from. Everyone else had, you know, kind of gone into the career force and were you know, being trained for that career as well. A good chunk of them finished school and then worked locally at like a local library, and then decided they want to go into this field, and some people were just, you know, taking a year off or two and were luckily able to, you know, they had a spouse to help them there and support them, which was, none of those were really options for me. I really did enjoy, actually, for the most part, the program at Dalhousie. I didn't love living in Nova Scotia. It felt very isolated for me. So right at the end of first year, I did my job placement. So Dalhousie, you have to do a 100-hour job placement, and they organize it, you know, they work with you to try and find an institution. I ended up working for about 2.5 weeks at the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, which is right kind of on the shoreline. I was kind of going through on cataloging all their stuff. And through all my courses at this time and through this experience, I realized I didn't necessarily want to go into archiving or cataloging for that reason. Again, I wanted to be dealing with people, just not, you know, teenagers necessarily, right? But yeah, so I got to do that job placement, and then I went out west and worked at Indigenous Museum in Banff as a tour guide, and then lived in Canmore, the town right beside it. It was an amazing summer. Everyone I met there was either from Ontario or Australia. So I had this summer where I was like, oh my god, I love Alberta. This is amazing. We have this stereotype about Alberta being like these redneck, hillbilly, kind of racisty, homophobic people in Canada. Like, you know, this was totally weird, and I kind of went back to school in September and was like, okay, I know I want to go out west. So I finished my degree on time in 2016, and I started interviewing and applying for jobs by Christmas. So basically the entire second semester I was finishing my degree and actively searching for post-secondary work. I ended up interviewing for, I think, 3 or 4 different places, 2 in Ontario, and both of those were contract positions, and 1 year contract, I believe, and then for libraries, and then one was in Alberta here, which I ended up not getting, and then the position that I actually did get here. So I actually originally came to the position that I'm in on a contract, 1 year contract, with the potential for it to expand into permanent, which was one of the reasons I honestly wasn't super interested in getting on contract, because I didn't want to start hopping geographically all over the place, but I saw the potential to expand. And when I talked to the people who interviewed me, who are now my bosses, they had explained it's a new position, so it might morph. That was kind of why they posted it as a contract. So they ended up telling me that they hired me because I'd had that experience in the Indigenous Museum. So they needed someone with the library experience, in that MLAS preferably, comfortable working with technology, which I very much was, and you very much have to do in MLIS degrees now. And then the province of Alberta had just given libraries grants to start working to Indigenous communities, and that was not anyone that they had on existing staff knew anything about. So I ended up where I am, and the position morphed into a full-time permanent position, which is where I am at now. I think looking where I am now, I'm quite happy. Everyone I graduated with has full-time permanent positions. Yeah, honestly, the field in Canada, there's enough people leaving it kind of at the same pace as new graduates coming in, for the most part, even with loss of funding kind of gradually hitting us. So you have to look at what your geography is, but there is absolutely positions in the field in Canada. You will notice that in this whole kind of journey, I'm from Ontario, I went to Nova Scotia, and now I'm in Alberta. No, come back, son! Oh my god, I think the sun's telling me to shut up. Do whatever works for you. I don't think there's really any crystal clear, easy path. Throughout kind of while I was going to school, I worked a lot at Subway as a sandwich artist. I also did my volunteering at the Archives Special Collections, which was really eye-opening. That may not be an option for everyone. I know some universities have agreements with their staff that they can't do that. So that you could also look into see if your local library takes volunteers as well. That would be another thing. Or if you have a museum or archives. Most cities have archives or records management. While going to Dalhousie, I had a buttload of jobs. I throughout the whole time worked at Subway full-time, basically. I was also an exam proctor during exam period and then during non-exam periods. So if people with special, we had students that were, blind or, had difficult visibility. So I helped them take tests, which was something that they did through the, I think it was student disability or aid department at Dalhousie. I also had a 10-hour-a-week, I think it was, job at one of the law library on Dalhousie campus. Dalhousie did a nice thing where they gave there's a couple different libraries on campus depending on the department. So they offered those libraries would generally hire us library students to do their circulation hours during the evening. So I worked 10 hours a week at the law library, just, replacing leaflets and, telling people how to search the catalog and actively applying for jobs. That's basically what you did there. So it was interesting that you get the chance there to work in the library, though I did find that whole process very frustrating because, like I said, I went straight from high school to undergrad to grad school, and not everyone did that. So when I was applying for these jobs with other MLIS students, there were several people that they didn't have to work during any of their undergrads, so they were able to volunteer at libraries or institutions, which I was not able to afford to be able to do. And then they would get jobs on campus before me, and I was like, but this is for learning experience. That was the whole purpose of this, and I'm asking for that experience that person has already got. So that was something that was very frustrating, but I ended up finding and worming and pushing my way in. I was also at Dalhousie an office assistant for, I think, about 10 hours a week as well. So yeah, I ended up working like 60 hours a week while going to school full-time at Dalhousie. Anyways, I hope this answers most of the questions I've been getting. I'm sorry if it didn't. I'm trying to make this as concise as possible, but it goes off very quickly. Yeah, if you have any questions, put them down below. I will, answer them as fast as I can, and let me know if you have any other topics on libraries that you want me to touch on.